Good morning. Tuesday, January 26th. I'll be here again tomorrow and the next day. We'll pre-record a service on Saturday morning to be up by 10 o'clock Sunday morning. The theme will be the presentation of Jesus, the baby Jesus taken to the temple when he was just still an infant. And we'll watch the weather. The plan right now is to gather at noon on Sunday at the church parking lot to do a skit around the presentation and sing 4 hymns. As last week, though, we'll watch carefully. It's going to be chilly, but if there's not much wind, it shouldn't be brutal. Anyway, we'll, try to fine-tune that as we get closer to the weekend. Zoom Bible study every Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. We're happy to send you the link to invitation to hook into Zoom for that. And we're looking at the second epistle of Peter for a couple of more weeks. And then we'll pick up a different book. Suggestions are welcome, by the way, for topics for Bible study. Either a book of the Bible, a character of the Bible, a theme of the Bible, anything at all. And also, of course, you're always welcome to just contact me on Facebook Messenger or by email or telephone or whatever you'd like, and just ask a general question about faith or church history or liturgy or, anything that I might be able to shed some light on, either to make as a topic for these conversations or just to address to you personally. The IT committee meeting is going to be Wednesday night. Council's going to meet on the 8th of February to talk about whether to go back to in-person worship yet or not, depending on how vaccinations are going, how infection rates are going, hospitalizations, all of that sort of thing. February 6th, which is a Saturday, 12 to 2, is a food donation drive and also a food pickup drive. If you ordered a grinder or chili or salad from our food sale, all of the food donations and money raised will go to our local partners to help our hungry neighbors. And we've also set up our own little free pantry outside of the church office. Anytime during the regular workday, anybody can come by to either take something out of that or put something into it so that it becomes an adjunct assist for those who are facing some sort of food insecurity. I think that's most of the announcements we have. Oh, and the women of the ALCA are in our church. They're chaired by Paula Rosenbeck, has a Valentine project, so that people are making Valentines, which can be distributed to people who are in nursing homes or otherwise lonely or shut in or whatever, lift some spirits, So if you need information about that, it's in our newsletter, which can be found online, or one could be mailed to you if you call the office and would like more information about that. So today, we'll continue with a conversation about some of the ministries of the church that go beyond the level of the congregation. And I'm going to talk today specifically about campus ministries. So the prayer comes out of our worship book. I always get this wrong here. It's just titled Schools. Eternal God, bless all schools, colleges, and universities, that they may be lively places for sound learning, new discovery, and the pursuit of wisdom, and grant that those who teach and those who learn may find you to be the source of all truth, through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. I said the other day that most clergy in our tradition have had an experience either of a good campus ministry in college or outdoor ministry, sometimes both. And in my case, I think I mentioned I'd never gone to a church camp, so outdoor ministry was not formative in my case. But I did have a really excellent campus ministry. I'll say a bit more about that in a second. One of the things that happened when Christianity came to the North American continent is that several of the mainline historic denominations immediately set to work establishing educational networks. The Presbyterians were very big on this. They love higher education and founded a number of colleges and universities. The Congregationalists also did the same. The Episcopalians did the same, and the Lutherans did the same. The Methodists also have a number of good colleges and universities, and there are several Baptist ones. So, almost every denomination in more recent, the most recent decades, last century or so, a number of independent, non-denominational Christian universities and colleges have popped up as well. In our case, the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, we have a network of 26 Lutheran colleges and universities scattered across the country. There's none in New England, per se. The closest one to here is Wagner College, which is on Staten Island. There are, I think, 3 in Pennsylvania, Muhlenberg and Allentown, which is where our kids went, Gettysburg, and Susquehanna. I don't think there are other. Oh, Thiel. Thiel is a Lutheran college way out in western Pennsylvania. But there are 26 of these colleges scattered around. Most of them are relatively smallish, 2,000 students, 3,000, 4,000 students. They're not big, giant universities usually. They all have a magnificent chapel and a position of campus chaplain. So, the one I'm most familiar with is Wittenberg University, which is in Springfield, Ohio. And the reason I know something about Wittenberg is that when I went to seminary, my seminary was physically located on the campus of Wittenberg University. And so one of my internships actually was to be the assistant to the chaplain of Wittenberg. So I was actually involved in delivering campus ministry as a student. That was a really wonderful experience, I have to say. A lively campus ministry going on out of that official chapel, which is a gorgeous place. If you ever want to, just go online and look up Wittenberg University, see if you can find a picture of the chapel. The stained glass is amazing. And the school had a major in church music. So I think there were 7 choirs in the school and like 3 or 4, PhD organ professors, and the chapel, had the instrumentation to make use of this. So when there would be a service, for example, the Sunday or the week before leaving for Christmas break, oh my goodness, this massive chapel filled to the gills, and the music just flowing everywhere, and the beauty to the eyes of that stained, really a lively and a powerful and inspirational moment. Well, so this network of 26 colleges and universities across the country provide those kinds of supports. But they're not, I should say, they're not like heavy-handedly, Lutheran. It's not like the whole student body is Lutheran. The student bodies at these colleges are very, very mixed. They're interfaith. There is no. There are in some cases scholarships directed toward Lutheran students. They'd like to attract Lutheran students in that way. Wittenberg, again, for example, has a really good scholarship for active Lutheran college students. Others have various grant programs and scholarships as well. But they are happy to have students from other traditions. So in the case of Muhlenberg, the very high percentage of the student body is Jewish, coming from New Jersey. Allentown isn't far from New Jersey. Which creates its own kind of liveliness on campus, a Hillel organization, and then interactions between the students on campus around all of those kinds of things. So that's one facet of campus ministry, are our actual Lutheran college campuses, with their very pointed and effective and lively campus ministries carried on by professional chaplains. But in addition to that, there's a network of campus ministries that take place in congregations that are situated near colleges and universities. Well, there's one in Boston, for example, University Lutheran, UNILU for short, is a ministry in Boston that serves several student bodies, because Boston, is just a hotbed of higher education. So UNILU has a lot of people in it who are connected to Harvard. It also has a lot of people connected to MIT and various other colleges and universities around there. So in that case, a congregation is located in such a way that it can minister to college students specifically. That was my case. I went to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst for my undergraduate degree, which is in psychology, and located next to the campus, right smack next on campus. I mean, really easy walking distance from a lot of the dorms. Is Emmanuel Lutheran Church. And in those days, when I first went there, Emmanuel Lutheran Church was a part of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Richard Koenig was the pastor. It was a very modern building, a beautiful building, simple, not a giant congregation by any means, but there were several UMass students. There were some students from Amherst College. There were professors also from a couple of those institutions. And there was an intention on the part of the congregation. While it was an actual, regular, everyday congregation to its own members, of course, it understood that it had an outreach to the wider university community, and was a place able to bring a perspective, a theological perspective, and also a social ministry type perspective to bear. And so when I went to college, I was brought up as a Congregationalist in a little town in the Berkshires, but I had become familiar with a liturgical tradition. I'd been exposed to a Roman Catholic Mass a few times, and I found it uplifting. So I was interested. I had a budding inclination toward ordination. So, and I also knew, though, that I was interested at some point in being married, so I wasn't going to become a Roman Catholic priest, even if there weren't any doctrinal issues besides the celibacy thing. That just wasn't where I was headed. So I was looking for some kind of a Protestant type of church, but also with a liturgy. And in those days, that really was two choices: the Episcopal Church or the Lutheran Church. This Emmanuel Lutheran was such a warm and welcoming and lively congregation that I was immediately at home there, welcomed with open arms by clergy and laity alike. The first time I showed up, never had seen a Lutheran worship book. Was helped to find my way through the liturgy there. The music was great. The sermons were great. The people were great. The ministry outreach to the community was great. I mean, there was nothing missing. And the pastor, Richard Koenig, got wind early on that I had some inclination toward ministry, and he supported that idea. So even to this day, I have to say, to this day, he's the only clergy person who has ever visited me. I've been a member of a lot of churches over my life, many before I was ordained, and had good pastors and good relationships with pastors, but he's the only one that ever visited me. And it was to my dorm room. I was in an older dorm at UMass, and knock on the door, and here's Pastor Koenig. And he gave me my first theology book, which was interestingly not even by a Lutheran. Karl Barth was a Reformed theologian, very important theologian in the middle of the 20th century, and he wrote a little book called Evangelical Theology, and that paperback book was my first theology book. I believe I still own that book, and it was influential. But more influential was his personal support. And that's the type of thing that campus ministries do. They help people discern not just directions to the ministry, but they help students kind of weave faith into life. And again, sort of shatter, as do the outdoor ministries, shatter the misunderstanding that faith is a sort of a separate little religious box that we do on Sunday morning, and then life is what we do the rest of the time. Real life. No. Faith and life, in a whole mature way, are always bound together. And so some of these ministries, like outdoor ministries and like campus ministries, are very good at helping to do that. Students at college, of course, are generally seeking something. I mean, people go with a sort of a hunger for a curiosity for something. They're trying to grow in their understanding of, in my case, as a psych major, I mean, I just really wanted to try to understand how people ticked. And I loved all of those social sciences for that, sociology and psychology and history and literature and so on. But I also have always been a great lover of the hard sciences, as we call them, physics and biology and botany and astronomy and geology and those things. And so even there was this sense of how do these things meld? How do they come together? So campus ministry is a place that encourages a broadening, a deepening, an exploration of meaning and the intersection between academia and religiosity, the intersection between the community of the congregation that lives and works in the community and the wider community of the body of Christ. And of course, the student body who attends a church like that, everybody knows they're not going to stay. I mean, they're not going to become council members they'll after 2, 3, 4 years, they're going to move on. So campus ministries have a unique challenge in that way. A lot of their members are temporary and busy. Students at universities are busy. They don't have a ton of time to give to a congregation's life, and they aren't rich usually. College students are generally broke, so they're not going to be a huge source of income to the congregation. But they are seen, usually, campus ministries see those students as not as a burden or a problem or a challenge. They see them as an opportunity to do this kind of missionary work, really, explaining the gospel to people whose minds are being shaped deliberately every day by the intersection of ideas, conversations, and experiences. One of the interesting things that happened in my particular case, I was in college during the Vietnam War was going on, and the news came out that American forces had invaded Cambodia, which was illegal, right? And that news was a shocker to a lot of people. And so many colleges had a kind of a strike of some kind. They kind of shut down in protest about this. And that happened at UMass. So, it wasn't possible to carry on regular classes. And so what happened is a lot of kind of pop-up conversations happened. And I remember Dick Koenig, the pastor, took advantage of that. He set up a little kind of seminar, to talk about Christian teachings around war and peace and things like that, or did Bible studies and whatnot. And so, he came onto campus a little more often at that time and had conversations with people who weren't all from our tradition by any means. So again, a very stimulating experience during that time, and I felt both challenged and proud to be part of a church, a growing part of a church that had that concern and that willingness to have those conversations. There was never a sense of we've got a party line and you better swallow it kind of thing. Not from the professors, not from the church, not from anybody. That never happened. But rather, this really broad, in-depth, meaning-filled conversation about who we were as people, who we were as a nation, how could we contribute to a world that was better than the one we were living in, and all of that. Very important, very important. So campus ministries. And we have a number of these scattered around New England at some of the larger universities. Either a chaplain person who works on the campus, or a congregation next to a campus. I have not ever had the privilege of being a pastor in that situation. My last church in Manchester, the Manchester Community College was functioning very well, but there was just enough physical distance between the two, and we didn't really have a functioning campus ministry there. And the Yukon branch in Torrington left some time ago, so there's really no Winstead Community College is just a little too far for us to be an effective campus ministry there, although we have people in our congregation who are students there or have been. A couple other places where campus ministry then touched my life specifically. So at UMass, there was a lively interfaith and ecumenical set of conversations that went on. Most big campuses have a Hillel Center so that Jewish students have a place to go, and they also have something called a Newman Center, which is where the Roman Catholic kids hang out. They have their own chapel, and there was a big Newman Center at UMass. And on the week before we were going to go on Christmas break, there was always an ecumenical service, which the Newman Center participated in, as did Emmanuel Lutheran and other Christian groups around. And so as Pastor Dick Koenig was supporting me in this idea toward seminary and ministry, it was the Newman Center's turn to host this event, and it was the Lutherans' turn to provide the preacher. And so Dick Koenig says to me, "I'd like you to be the preacher." My very first sermon at a Catholic chapel at a secular university, but and under the watchful eyes of one of my earliest mentors. I was terrified. Terrified. I still have that sermon too. You know, it was a little notebook. I had it all, and it was handwritten or hand printed. And I would not give that sermon again, I don't think. Not that the content would be wrong necessarily, but I mean, well, I just was, you know, I was pretty green. But that was a springboard, you see. And so I have these very, very personal experiences with campus ministry that were very shaping. And then came time to choose a seminary to go to, and Dick Koenig again was mentoring me there. So as I said, it was a Missouri Synod church. This is a branch of Lutheranism centered in St. Louis that's mostly German in background and relatively conservative, although at that time there was a lot of openness to conversations with other Lutherans and ways of working in the world. So I applied to Concordia Seminary, the big Missouri Synod Seminary in St. Louis. They accepted me, but they said, "We'll save you a place, but you need a couple courses you haven't had yet. You need another class in, you have to do a class in Greek." And they wanted another class in German. I'd taken German in high school and college, but I didn't continue with it. But they wanted me to have one more class in German. So I stayed at my undergraduate school for a 5th year, and I took these classes that Concordia wanted me to take. I mean, going back to a language like German after you've been away from it for a couple of years, it was a tough year. Anyway, I did this. But in the middle of that year, Concordia shattered, broke in half over a controversy between the new president of Missouri Synod and the president of the seminary. They didn't see eye to eye. One fired the other. Concordia fell apart or broke in two. And so at that point, and for other reasons as well, I switched over to a place called Hamma School of Theology, named after its founder in Ohio, in Springfield, Wittenberg University. They accepted me. I went and had a marvelous experience there. That school has since merged. We have another school in Columbus called Capital University, and Capital had its own seminary, which was also called Capital. So Hamma and Capital merged in Columbus, and now is called Trinity Lutheran Seminary. So again, some points of intersection between the bigger campus ministry network of the ELCA and my personal life and my personal faith journey. I'm very much indebted always to those people in that place and time. And again, so when you contribute to your congregation, most of the money stays locally. Some goes to the Synod and some goes to the ELCA, and some of that money ends up supporting these colleges and campus ministries and chaplaincies and so on. And people's lives are touched. I swear to you, people's lives are touched. So you can do that with zeal and with confidence. I will see you here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. May your day be blessed, and may God's Spirit in your life be full.